Thank you so much for joining us today at this feels like first spring day of 2025 here at the Richmond Cultural Center. My name is Biliana Velkova, and I'm the public art planner for the city of Richmond. Thank you so much for coming. I will introduce our panel in just a second, but I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a preamble of why we put together this program for you. This program is part of the Art at Work workshop series that the City of Richmond puts on for professional development for artists and cultural workers. So there's a series of workshops that we're going to be offering. We've already started offering this year, and my colleague Todd can tell you more about it at the end of what's upcoming as part of Art at Work. But we do this, I do a talk every year about the Richmond Public Art Program and how our process is created and done here in Richmond. But I get a lot of questions about other programs and other cities' programs. So I thought, why not invite my friends, my colleagues from cities that are similar in size, but and they have their own public art programs, but all of us have slightly different processes and policies. So we wanted to invite everybody here and discuss our respective programs and answer any questions that you may have. So it's our first time doing it, and if it's successful, we would love to invite more cities and other colleagues, and hopefully maybe Richmond can come to your respective cities and do that. So thanks again for joining us for the Exploring Public Art Programs in the Region. I will introduce the panel, and then we're going to go through our presentation, which is very conversational, and then we'll have lots of time for questions at the end of the presentation. So here on my left, I have Laurie Phillips. Laurie holds a BFA from the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design. With an extensive career in arts administration, she has expertise in a broad range of cultural areas, including cultural policy development, administering cultural grant programs, community capacity building, and cultural advocacy. In her current role as the Public Art Officer in North Vancouver, she's focused exclusively on managing, commissioning, and maintaining and promoting the growing public art collection of over 200 works. Laurie is a founding member of the BC Public Art Network, established to facilitate dialogue and information sharing among public art administrators, and has been a lecturer presenter at the Creative Cities Network Summits, Americans for the Arts conferences, and educational institutions. And I think I've known Laurie for over 20 years. That really puts us back. To Laurie's left, we have Allison Collins. Allison works as a public art coordinator for the city of Burnaby, where she creates programs, activations, and opportunities in public art. Her background as a curator, writer, and a researcher, creative practice as a weaver, and experience working in municipal government in the delivery of cultural programs and arts funding informs her approach. She has produced exhibitions, programs, events, texts, and commissioned artworks both independently and as part of a variety of cultural organizations in Canada, including Kameya's Special Projects, Western Front, Vancouver Art Gallery, SFU Galleries, Pacific Association of Artist-Run Centers, and the Morris and Helen Belkin Art Gallery. She has a BFA in Visual Arts from the University of Ottawa and has an MA in Art History, Critical and Curatorial Studies from the University of British Columbia. And last but not least, we have Quyen Hoang, who is an experienced professional and in public art collections management, and curatorial work. Born in Hanoi, Vietnam, she moved to Canada at the age of 8. Quyen holds a BFA and a BA in painting and art history from the University of Calgary, as well as an MA in art history from Concordia University in Montreal. I didn't know we both went to Concordia. She currently oversees public art for the city of New Westminster, continuing her commitment in enriching the cultural landscape through art. Thank you, Quyen. Fantastic. Okay. And I'm Biliana Velkova, public art planner. I've been with the city since 2018, and I also have a BFA in painting and drawing and a MFA from the University of Saskatchewan in interdisciplinary studies. So maybe we can go to the next slide. We broke down our presentation in 3 very broad themes, and then we can kind of break it down more as we speak. But we wanted to give you an idea of the types of programs and opportunities we have within our respective programs and respective cities. We also wanted to talk about the different types of commissions that we have. And one of the questions that we all get the most is, how do we get involved and how do I apply for opportunities? So we have a slide on that as well, and then we're gonna go to questions. So next slide.
I'll just share, so this is an example of a civic project. For those of you who might not be familiar with that term, what we do oftentimes is respond and participate in creating a new work when a new building is being built or some kind of new piece of infrastructure. So in this case, we're looking at Gliding Edge by Jill Anholt. It was an artwork that was created, it took about 5 years for that project to go from kind of the earliest stages to actual completion. And it was made really directly to connect with the Rosemary Brown Recreation Center, which at the time that it was being conceived wasn't even called that. It was just called South Burnaby Arena. And so the focus of this building is ice skating or rink. Like, it has a lot of arena rinks inside. And the artist at the time that the call was put out to sort of announce the opportunity, the artist was really responding to that context. So the idea of Gliding Edge was brought forward as this kind of beautiful skate line, and sort of pitched in the sort of process of selection as an artwork that responded to that context. So we often see that when a new work is being created, it's kind of responding to the building or the context that in which it's being created. We'll probably talk a little bit more in depth about how those opportunities come to pass. Okay, so this one is an example of an artwork in the private sector. And so in Burnaby, we have it's very similar to the idea that I just shared about Civic, where a new building is being created. But in the private sector, those our opportunities for new works are often tied to a condo building or a mixed use commercial building that is being created by a private entity. We usually just call them developers. And so in our community, we have a 1% for art policy that applies to any individual, entity that's creating within certain conditions. So for us, it's like in our town centers and urban villages, which are like, kind of designated dense areas of town. And each time a development goes through all the mechanisms that are in place for a development to get approval through city council, they include a public art plan as part of that process. And then once the public art plan is approved, a new opportunity is created. And that often, especially in Burnaby, happens through a private public art consultant. So that's not the city itself running those opportunities, but we kind of oversee them. We participate in the selection at times, or we have a mechanism to, just kind of like more regulate how that transpires. And so the one we're looking at here is, I think, a really great example of the realization of that. It's Mafanwe McLeod, a really well-known artist who is very adept at public art, responding to a building that was called Polaris. So kind of like, often all these buildings that they're building, they have kind of names and schemes of how we want to think about them. And that building Polaris was, thinking about itself as a star, or stars in the sky, the North Star. And so she came up with this project called Cosmos, I Am As Constant as the Northern Star, which is a Fleetwood Mac lyric quote, pop culture reference. And what we're looking at is a glass mosaic created that looks at what the stars in the sky would look like above this building at night if you could see them all, from that spot. So, I think that's kind of a beautiful gesture, and it turned out really lovely. So, yeah, integrated into the building front, fountain on a street corner. It's in Metrotown. The first one was about 400,000. The second one, I don't have that information handy, but I'd be happy to follow up. This project, this is the last one I'll talk about, and then we'll probably move on to someone else. So this is a city-initiated project, and this is a bit of a different way of working. So as the public art coordinator for Burnaby, part of my work is to initiate projects that are responsive to Burnaby's community. And so one of my interests was in considering how an artwork might be activated, how a presence of art in a community could be instigated. And when I saw the opportunity to put something new forward, it seemed like a really logical thing to partner with a really well-seasoned organization. So in this case, Other Sites for Artist Projects, which has done a Lulu Talk in the past, and probably I think they've talked about this. They're a nonprofit entity from Vancouver, and the way they work is they kind of find their own way to do public art. So without a building in place, without some other mechanism, they initiate their own projects and do all their own fundraising and find ways to support it. And in this case, they'd been workshopping this idea of building mobile art studios for probably about 5 years. And when I joined the team in Burnaby, I knew of this project and kind of participated in their last design charrette and said, we can probably bring this to Burnaby successfully and use it as a test case for thinking about what public art can be in community beyond a sculpture. And so just to explain, it's a mobile art studio that inside has a functioning, kind of desk and space for artists to work, wall space that you can hammer and nail into, a functioning sink, and has power and heat and air conditioning in the summer. And so we've rolled it into Edmonds Park. It's sitting kind of approximately, 50 yards away from a playground, right beside a bathroom building, which is handy, and near tennis courts and the water splash pads. So it's been an interesting experiment in bringing artists. We did an open call to community to bring artists in to use the studio. We really wanted to kind of use it as a catalyst to get to know more about what artists in our community needed. And Burnaby doesn't really have a studio building. It's not like some of our other communities already have residencies or studio buildings. We have really centralized civic processes and programs in place, but we don't have a lot of nonprofit or like independently run studios. So this was an opportunity to kind of expand that conversation. So I feel like I've spoken a lot, but yeah, it's like, as opposed to the first two, it's an approach of trying to think about the artist as opposed to the structure itself, or think about those things together.
So this artwork is by James Harry. He's a Squamish artist, and it's called Miutes at Water's Edge, and it's at the Temasout Aquatic Community Center. So New West, most of our funding does come from civic capital construction projects, our percent, and this was actually the largest capital project the City of New West has done, and this was the first time that we did a call for Indigenous artists for this project as well. Oh, sorry. And this was $500,000, also the largest commission that the city has ever sort of done in New Westminster. This is part of a mural pilot project that we are trying to develop to create opportunities to support more murals in New Westminster. And the idea is that, we have a lot of murals that have been done over the years by the community or by artists, but they haven't been well funded and well supported and well resourced. And so this is an opportunity where we brought in help, and we hired the Vancouver Mural Festival to oversee the project. So they help artists sort of scale their artworks to, the kind of size that isn't always easy to do in the public realm because it often requires lifts and traffic management and insurance and all these logistics that is really hard to put on artists only. So hiring VMF, which sadly is gone now, as an organization, was really helpful to oversee those projects so that artists can focus on being artists rather than having to project manage all of these logistical things. And so we've done a couple projects now where we've commissioned artists to work with VMF and to create murals for the city. And this is Eleanor Atkins. She's a Kwantlen artist, and this mural is right near our waterfront. So it was really important to have that Coast Salish presence near the water as well. So this is also a pilot that we did in 2023, and it's an artist in residence. So we invited Holly Schmidt and Janet Hoang to work in the Irving House, which is the one of BC's oldest historic homes, and it's run as a museum in New West. And the idea is that we want to be able to give artists opportunities that are not so transactional, right? So normally we have a call to artists. Here's the project, here's the budget. They come up with a concept, they create the artwork, and it's installed, and then we're kind of done. An artist in residence is an opportunity to immerse an artist into a community, into a civic space, to do research, to learn about the site, the history, and also have conversations with the community who are familiar with these spaces, who come and visit these spaces, and maybe have a certain understanding of the history through these spaces. So the artists are very socially engaged artists. They're very generous when it comes to working with the public. So they were just amazing as sort of our pilot to engage people in this home. Janet Hoang is Chinese herself, and she has done a lot of sort of research around Chinese community and history in Canada, and so this was an opportunity for her to sort of extend to that research and really highlight sort of this historic home is like very doesn't really represent the sort of the Chinese labor that was involved in running the household, and so through Janet's work she was able to sort of bring out those histories that are somewhat invisible. And so I don't know, talked quite a bit about this, so but the idea is that it is an opportunity to give artists time in a space and then create interventions, create conversations through public art projects. And these works that they created were very temporary responses, and it's just meant to expand our understanding of these sites and the histories that we share with the community.
So similarly in Richmond, we have kind of three major branches of our program. So we have the civic program, my colleagues have been talking about, the private and as well as community. So just really quickly, just touch on some of our programs and how they may differ or are the same as yours. So this is a project called Taifa by Charlotte Wall and Puya Khalili that was unveiled about a couple of years ago, but it was 5 years in the making because it was commissioned right in the middle of the pandemic. This was funded by funds from the Oval, actually. So the Oval, as you know, the Richmond Oval was created as part of the Olympics. It's a legacy, fantastic space, sports and cultural space in the Oval district of Richmond. And as part of that project, we had 1% of funds that went towards creating artworks. So we actually had this work, as you can see, was commissioned a bit later. We have a variety of projects that were done as part of the Olympics, and this was kind of like the last project that was done. So like my colleagues, we have 1% that is typically connected to capital projects like building a sports facility, building a community center, building a fire hall. All of those projects have a public art component to them, and that's how they're funded, and they're owned and maintained by the city. We run our typical civic process to commission them, and they tell a story about the community around the area, the site itself, or the functions of the site. In this case, this is just next to the oval, but it's this piece really signals the river, Fraser River, and these are cattails, like typha is the Latin name for cattails, which are found along the river. And it's a beautiful piece because it kind of, the dike is a little bit raised, so you actually can see the typha, and as you can see, they're lit at night, and that signals the river even before you see it. So it's quite poetic, quite beautiful. The artists are local artists, very well versed in public art, so we're happy to have their work in our collection. Yeah, the city owns and maintains it, and I invite you to see it next time you take a walk along the river. Next slide. Similarly to Allison, we also have a pretty developed public art program through the private program of Richmond. This is as part of our development permit application process, and typically is secured as part of rezoning or the development permit allocation for development. It's not actually quite 1%. Ours is about 0.5%, so it's a little bit less. But it's still, we can do quite significant public artworks. Oh, Frank, you asked me to say the typha was about 330,000. This one, I don't have it right in front of me, was under 200. This work is by Nathan Lee, called Fireside. And interestingly enough, I love working with Nathan because he always, and I know he's done work with you in US, he's always able to unearth the most amazing stories that even our archive sometimes is not familiar with. He's such an amazing detective of history. So he was able to find an interesting story that happened in this area. This is the Brick House Estate in close to the Oval, and there was a story about the burning of the brick house, old house that was in the site, and the only thing that was left was the hearth of the fireplace. So he reenacted this as kind of like a fireside chat, so you can sit around and kind of have a conversation around the fire, the leftover fire hearth of the estate. So there's some interesting comments around history and preservation of history and how we managed to coordinate that. Beautiful piece also. It's cited in the landscaping of the new development, and in this case, the part of the public art projects that are done as part of the private development program are owned and maintained by the strata. So different than the civic projects. So, and that's also done by a public art consultant. So it's not done by the city, but we help manage, we're kind of an advisory advisory role and kind of facilitators to make sure that it is following our private public art process. And the third branch of the program is the community public art program. We do a lot of projects similarly to Quyen and Allison, where they're not typically necessarily projects that are tangible. They may not even have an object at the end. It's more about connecting with the community. It is about the artists really kind of engaging with other either communities or other artists, and really kind of exploring the process and the history of a site or a conversation, but not necessarily creating a legacy out of that process. In this case, Keely O'Brien, who is a local Richmond-based artist, did a project as part of our Engaging Artists in the Community program, which we do every year. And it's kind of like a very, very broad understanding, kind of I guess, artist in residence, where the artist comes into a specific organization or community and spends about a year with them. So they usually take longer. These projects are, they take time. In this case, Keely worked with the neurodivergent youth as well as the Richmond Public Library, and she created a series of workshops and zines to engage with the local youth. And they had an exhibition of their zines at the end.
A lot of what's been said is very similar in the city of North Vancouver and districts. So in North Vancouver, we're 2 municipalities, which makes things a little more complicated, actually. But we'll just call it North Vancouver for now. And we do have the 3 programs as well, the civic, developer, and the community. We also have artist in residence programs going on as well, which we just started recently in the last couple of years. This is an example of a civic public art project. So the funding is coming really from the taxpayer base. And in our civic program, we have 2 ways that you can create art. One way is an annual amount of money that comes to the program. And we can, through our Public Art Advisory Committee, identify projects that we'd like to see, that the community would like to see sort of addressed, and we initiate and manage and administer and deliver the project. So this is one of them. This was actually, I picked this one because it's kind of interesting to me in the sense that it was done many, many years ago on a smaller bridge, but over the same river. And it was a local artist, Squamish Nation artist, Jody Broomfield. And we were putting a bridge in, the city was, over McKay Creek. And he envisioned, the salmon, there's a lot of work going on in the river and to assist the stream keepers and that kind of thing to have salmon return to their native streams. And but he also had a brother, well, a cousin that he considered a brother that lived with him and had actually passed away in this location along the river here at quite a young age. And so he had a lot of sentimental and a lot of environmental reasons why this is a very sacred, important place to him. And he created this one, Salmon for Wendell. And we just, he just imagined, of course, the salmon heads and then the sort of spines of the fish on each side across the river. And this is a really good example of integrated art where we're using the art as part of a structure that is part of the environment, a bridge in this case. So when the bridge was being, the pathways were being rearranged about 15 years later, and they were making a new bridge. It was longer, and but in the same area. And the city worked really well with the artist, and we basically recreated the same entrance structures to the bridge, and the fish were reinstalled many years later in basically the same location. So we get a lot of community members really appreciate this one, and it's really just a reminder for the community to remember that the fish are there in the stream and to take better care of the environment. Oh, the budget on that was many years ago, $15,000. Yeah, so it was very small. Of course, another, I think, 20 on the move, the moving of it to the next thing. So, okay, this is an example. One of the things I wanted to say just on the past one, I'm not sure which slides I sent, but we do have, through Civic, this small base of money that we get every year to do projects like that, but we also do have a new capital program. So when there are new buildings, there's more money available for new buildings, such as libraries, fire halls, things that you said. And we try to aim at that 1% goal for the overall budget of the project to have art. So right now we are building a new Harry Jerome Rec Center in the city of North Vancouver, and it does have an art budget that was included as part of the overall construction budget. So there's sort of 2 ways that civic public art occurs. This one is a developer project. This is a BOZA development in Lynn Valley. And this one had a $350,000 budget, but it's not only this piece. It includes this sculpture, 3 bears that one of them functions as a seat that you can sit on, a daddy bear, a mama bear, and two babies that are in a plaza, and they're also nearby plaza. And they also are made of bronze like this. And then there are a series of 8 bronze panels of wildlife that go in this entrances to all the buildings in this development. It was quite a significant development for Lynn Valley as they're building out these new town center areas. Lynn Valley is starting to develop itself into its own unique town center for the community. And so this was the artist just envisioning, it's called In Essence. It's a team of artists, Edwin and Veronica Damdenagalis. They're based out of Hamilton, Ontario, and Spain. They're in Spain more often now than in Hamilton. And they have done several works in North Vancouver, amazing artists actually, and they can really stretch a budget. And one of the things I want to mention about budgets while we're just talking about budgets is a lot of people get kind of shocked when they hear, oh, $350,000, like, blah. But just remember, the artist is not getting $350,000. They're getting a portion of that budget. The rest is all in it's engineering, it's planning, it's material costs, it's fabrication, it's transportation. There's all these things. They usually get about 20%, 15 to 20%, I'm hearing across our panel, of the budget. So for a $100,000 budget, you know, they're getting 15 to 20,000 that's in their pocket. And those projects may take 3 years. I mean, I usually say 3 years, sometimes it's 6 years. The artists aren't really getting overly rich on these unless they're getting a lot of them. But I really feel sometimes it's a labor of love, quite honestly. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. Yeah, so this is an example of our community public art project, our program. I have 2 slides in here. This one's a very specific one. This is called Lynn Valley Love. And this is where we responded to a violent incident that happened in Lynn Valley. So we had an incident where somebody got out of control emotionally, and they came with a knife to this community, this is actually Lynn Valley, and attacked several people, just innocent people that were out there that day. And one person actually passed away, and it was very traumatic for the community actually that were there. This is a library. It was right in the library area, and it was you know, something North Vancouver doesn't experience that often. So we had a community member actually reach out to us and say, you know what, I've actually been through something like this in Toronto. I'd love to help you help the community heal. So she actually is a quilter, and she initiated a community art project engaging the community in a healing process. And the healing process, she did 2 projects. She did one that was a series of quilts that hung in the breezeway where the incident happened that just said love. And every community member could pick up a little package and quilt their own little X or O, and she made X's and O's and made a quilt that said love that hung in this breezeway for about 2 years actually after the event. And it was well received. Many community members picked up packages and participated. In fact, we had to add a quilt to make sure that everybody who participated had their piece of love included in the quilt. And the second part of the project were these banners that were based on the idea of Lynn Valley Strong. And she reached out to her quilting community. And her quilting community is vast. And her name's, this is Breen, her last name's out of my head right now, Breen Jones. Anyway, she's from North Van as well. And so she reached out to her community, and we got banners from all over the world, Australia, all over Europe, South America, everywhere. People made quilts based on a pattern that she suggested, like this length, you know, this width, and a certain amount of colors, and then they did whatever they wanted. And we had 68 submissions from all around the world to send love and healing from all over the world to our community to help us heal. So I just thought it was an amazing project. It was done on a shoestring, So I think total $7,000. So it was 7. Yeah, she wanted to just basically volunteer her time, and it really was mostly the money was for her and her time and materials. So it was wonderful.
Our next section of the presentation, we get a lot of questions about the types of commissions, and we'll give a little bit of example, a few examples of the types of commissions that we do. Again, they may overlap in our programs, but generally there's commissions that are the artist design, builds, and installs the artwork. So they're responsible for everything from the design to the installation, working with fabricators, working with contractors, working with engineers. So those are the kind of like the heavier projects. And Lori talked about kind of a little bit about what's involved in the budgeting of those projects. We also have a lot of projects that are design only, where the artist is only responsible for the design, for the image, and then that is fabricated by someone else, installed by someone else, typically the city. So the artist is typically maybe even a two-dimensional artist that may not have experience building things, but we would take that image and then translate it into whatever material, maybe mosaic, glass, plastic, metal, and then that is integrated or installed into a surface or a facility. And then we have other projects that I'd like to talk more about in terms of, I know you're about to launch a roster program. We have a roster program, you as well. I don't know about North Van. So we'll touch based on that, as well as some artists in residence programs and any other wild cards. So maybe the first slide, and I can't remember who it was. Allison.
This is me. Yeah, I'm gonna say one thing in addition to how you explained this, which is that we work across a lot of teams in our work, and so that really influenced like some of the things that I chose to share. We work a lot with our Indigenous relations team. We work with people in engineering. We work with people who are in transportation. We work with communications. Basically people with different aims inside the city and outside sometimes. And so our Indigenous relations team came to our team last year and said that they were interested in working with us to, recruit an artist to help them with this new design jersey that they were partnered with the Hope and Health charity event. And so the city of Burnaby has a really nice, every year it's on it's on September 30th, and it's like an event for children to come and play soccer and to kind of like share appreciation and they get to interface with elders. And so Candace Thomas, who is an artist from Tsleil-Waututh, had applied for a separate different commission with the city, and we kind of kept some of these applications on file. And so when the team came to us, we were able to kind of build this bridge. And so in this case, that was a design only situation where the artist submitted a design, and in fact the design that she created, the artwork she created, was then further brought into dialogue with a professional designer that was working on the jerseys, who helped the whole process of adapting that work onto the jersey. And so that's and if you want to go to the next slide, I think that one's mine as well. So that just to give you another example, like sometimes that is all you really need from an artist, is like the base. And then because a lot of the work is around liaising with other professionals to like realize how that work is going to come to pass. And in this case, this is an artwork by Chase Gray, Musqueam artist. And again, we were approached by colleagues in project management, which is kind of like an area that manages construction and implementation of various infrastructure things, and who were interested in embedding a design into a pathway. And so our approach was to kind of create a brief, a sort of description of what this overview would be, what this project would entail. And to troubleshoot it, we came up with the idea of making a tile that could be repeated over and over again as a stencil. And, you know, we also talked back and forth, do we want to do colored concrete? Are we going to do sandblasting? Like, what are the potential methods that we're going to use to imprint this design into the pathway? Why did we choose to do a pathway? You know, that is also important, like the motivation of like what things get selected. In this case, it's in a park, it's in Deer Lake Park. It was the replacement for some, you know, it was a kind of a boring project to like repave a part of a pathway that was supposed to be a green path and never took. And so that in order to improve drainage, like it was just really nuts and bolts, this thing. And so in order to kind of turn the conversation away from, or to claim a bit of conversation on what this public space could be, we really, again, wanted to work with an Indigenous artist. We're really thinking about landmarking as a strategy to try to help people understand Coast Salish design, and the relationship of host nations to the communities that maybe they don't have as much visual presence in anymore. So in this case, the artist submitted this, and we worked with the actual construction company, created a really giant rubber stencil and did lots of interesting tests. The artists got to step away from that process, and they handed us a lot of trust. And we also handed that trust over to our colleagues in project management who are really managing this project on behalf of everyone. And it's about to launch in about, you know, a month or so. It's about to be finished in a month or so. We're going to do a walk and talk with the artists sometime in the spring. It'll be an interesting process to see. And just to say as well, because I think this is a burning question, is like, how do you get selected for something like this? So in Burnaby, we have, we're sort of building our processes right now. I'm the first public art coordinator for the city of Burnaby. My job has been in place for about 2 years, 2.5 at this point. And so a lot of it has been by directly going out doing research and starting to build connections with communities of artists. But now that we've got our feet on the ground and a few things realized, we're also starting to put new processes in place for artists to start to come to us. And that roster program that you described is something that we're working on right now. And so what a roster program is it's kind of like a listing of artists who have shared interest with us that they want to do projects like this, where they may want to contribute two-dimensional design or a working process that they're familiar with, and collaborate across, you know, kind of unforeseen whatever those kinds of projects might be. Sometimes it's a manhole cover, or it could be a mural, or it could be many things. And so we'll be doing an open call for artists to come to us and submit to us and indicate their interest to us. Because of course we recognize that we have limits in the amount of people that we network with already, and we want to open that up to new people. So that will happen through what is traditionally a kind of call to artists process, where you send out a brief of what that program, all the criteria associated with it, and then people can respond and send them. And in our case with the roster, we don't ask for any designs. We're just asking for people to submit portfolios, so that we know what your practice is, and then it will go from there. So we can talk more about that at another time, later on. But I think those are my last 2 images. So we can go to the next one. Yeah, I think this is Quyen.
So I wanted so much to say. Right? So we are, so the way that Allison kind of explained that opportunities comes for us with the Percent for Art funding strategy, the funding is always attached to a civic capital infrastructure project, like a community center that's being built, or a park, things like that. But what we're trying to do in the city of New West is also we want to be more intentional and strategic around where public art needs to go. So we are actually pooling our funding so that we can sort of make sure that we disperse public art evenly throughout the city, and also think about what projects we actually need, instead of just because we have something being built doesn't necessarily mean that's the best place for a public artwork. Sometimes there's no public there. Sometimes the budgets are really tiny. So for us in public art, a $5,000 project is just as much work as a $500,000 project, right? There's so much planning and design, and so much goes into it. So pooling our funding will allow us to sort of maximize those dollars and then think strategically where we can do public art. So we are also developing a public art plan that will give us a roadmap, give us priorities, and help us in terms of expending that funding. And then we also have an artist roster that ours is a little bit different, I think, than others. Ours is, it's a kind of like a pre-qualified list of artists who have been selected for over a 2-year period. We're trying to have a period of time that we can actually hire as many artists as we can that have expressed interest. But our projects, it can go up to $75,000. We kind of follow our procurement policy in terms of how we can hire artists as well. So, and it allows us for a more curated approach to selecting artists. So the roster will allow us to pair artists whose practices and interests align with the goals of certain projects. And these are just things that emerge over time, and sometimes they have really short timelines, or and it doesn't allow for lots of time for do an open call. It's also about recognizing the labor that we put on artists to always be applying for calls. So this is sort of a more streamlined approach. It's it's a list of artists that we already know are interested in public art. We know what kinds of projects they've done before, and then pairing them is just, and working with them in a more supportive way is just sort of I guess a different approach than doing an open call every time there's an opportunity. This project is actually, we did a call for artist-initiated public art. So Emily Crew, who actually is based in North Van, was the artist that was selected. So we did a call in 2022 where we invited artists to submit proposals to do public art where they felt was important, to talk about what they felt was important, as opposed to the traditional way where the city will decide the site, the project parameters, the goals, and things like that. So it's a way of sort of reversing that traditional role and allowing for more grassroots and more artist-led approaches to public art, and sort of so having that opportunity is really important. And Emily did a project where she, this is an interactive LED installation on City Hall, and the public could text into the artwork and it would change the lights on City Hall. And it was a way for to allow citizens to, say their piece to City Hall or whatever. Not that it would be literally translated, but it was still cathartic, and you could do whatever you want through text, and then and know that it has an impact visually on the City Hall. So, yeah, next slide. And this is, we have a project on the Anvil Center in New West as well. It's a building downtown, and we partner with Capture Photography Festival and work with them to either select an artist or curate an artist for the project. So this artwork is by Karen Zalamea, and a lot of projects that we work on, we invite artists to be really site-specific and really delve into the place and the sites that their artworks will be on. So she did a lot of, she looked into our archives and explored sort of, she's Filipino-Canadian, and basically found there's no representation of Filipinos in New West, even though there's a huge population there. So she found this news article from the 1980s with folkloric dancers from the Philippines, and she and these are female dancers, and so this is an image that she created through cyanotype and references the color of the river, and so it's temporary public art piece that's very site responsive, and it's so the Anvil Center facade is always changing with new voices, asking the city for, you know, all kinds of things, like how do we represent our community equitably? How do we sort of, how do people understand what is going inside the building as well? So inside the building is the museum and archives, and so this was also a way of bringing the inside out on the glass.
So in terms of commissions, I will just give a little bit, some more examples that maybe weren't mentioned. But in the city, we do have a design-only approach to art. This is a very good example, actually, of a project that was a private developer, but in this case, the city actually ran the process. In Richmond, the developer has the choice to either have their own public art consultant run the process, or basically hand it over to the city for us to coordinate and follow, similar to our civic public art process. And in this case, there was a really good opportunity with this building, which had this kind of triangle facade, to integrate a design-only project into the facade. So the artist, Thomas Cannell, he's a local Musqueam artist, created just the drawing, just the design, and that design was then fabricated by a glass fabricator out of Munich in Germany, who actually has been creating glass for 200 years. They did cathedrals, and now they do mosaics and glass for all over the world. Franz Mayer is their name. So they created the glass tiles. Thomas actually was able to go to Munich just before the borders closed during the pandemic. He got out on time, but to make sure that the colors are correct, and they have a studio for artists to go there and spend about a week and to kind of just make sure that the process and the design is true to the artist's vision. And then the tiles were then transported and then installed by the building's contractor onto the facade. So it's a beautiful piece, very punchy. We actually won a national award with this artwork. The artist, in this case, was a two-dimensional artist where he just created the design, and then it was installed by the contractor. The next one, I wanted to also touch a little bit about our roster program. We have 2 rosters in Richmond. We also change them every 2 years. The first roster is the mural roster. We have a general call out every 2 years. And in this case, we have a very rich roster in terms of the art practices in it. So we have muralists, like painters. We have digital artists. We have all kinds of different types of artists that can then translate their work into murals around the community. Every year, we have a call for mural walls in the community. So businesses and community organizations and even individuals can apply with a wall that's publicly accessible. Like, there's some criteria for the wall, and then we match make the artist with the wall. And we do about 6 to 8 a year. It's been very, very popular. All of those projects are temporary, so the owner takes the responsibility for maintaining and of course it's their wall, but they maintain the mural for at least 5 years. And after that, they can either continue to maintain it or it can be painted over. And what I've been finding, and I wanted to mention this with Allison, you talked about your project development team coming to you with this project on the sidewalk. Now we're seeing other city departments, and I love that. They have budgets, and they said, we do this every year. For example, we have a facilities department. They have to repaint these washrooms along the dike every year. And they said, Biliana, we pretty much have the same budget that you use for your murals, so why don't we give you this budget? Instead of repainting the washroom gray every year, why don't we do murals? So it was a really good way of kind of advocating for public art in the city with our different colleagues and projects, and kind of pull our resources to create more opportunities, because our budgets are not very big. So with the washrooms, we did 4 last year, we're doing 3 again this year, and it's been a really good way of kind of pulling those resources. So anyways, so that's the mural roster. I just realized we have the artist in the audience. This is an artist, a wonderful work by Cherry Archer that just got installed a couple of months ago, very close to the brand new capstan station. If you haven't seen the artwork in the station, is wonderful. It was done by TransLink, and it's by Howie Tzu, beautiful mosaic in the station. But Cherry is part of our urban infrastructure roster, which is smaller projects than the murals, and it's typically, again, working with different departments like transportation and parks and facilities to do vinyl wraps on city infrastructure. And we do a lot of those traffic boxes, for example. We do about 28 to 30 a year, so there's a lot of opportunities. Typically, this is for local artists, and we always do a call out every 2 years for the urban infrastructure roster. It's a really good opportunity for emerging artists that may not have public art experience to get involved and see their work done in a 3-dimensional way in the public realm. And in this case, Cherry did some research around the site, the rivers nearby, and she also knew what these, she could take inspiration from the artwork that's going to be installed at the capstan station that's now there. So there is a conversation between both works. I think it turned out beautifully. And in this case, she did a design only, so she created the photographs, gave us the photographs, which were then reproduced as the part of the vinyl wrap. Maybe next slide. Oh, that's Lori.
How much time do we have here? All right. Yeah, I can just go quickly. I also just wanted to say on the Lynn Valley Love Project, her name is Barine Campbell. I said Jones. I just want to make sure I got that correct because she's an amazing artist. So Barine Campbell. The Sisters Project, new project here right across from Lionsgate Hospital. So we are focused a lot, as I think many communities are, about making sure that our Indigenous communities are represented well. And I do see the developers as well actually really focusing on this and really wanting to see a lot more of the local Indigenous community being represented. This is James Harry and his project, The Sisters, and you can see here the woman's face on the top here, and there's another one on the other side. And the Sisters, it refers to the Lions Mountains, which are actually in Squamish Nation community. Obviously, not Lions were never ever here in British Columbia, so it would never be called the Lions. They were called the Sisters. And so this is, and that's a Thunderbird, which in the front here that he's got represented, and then the 2 sisters on each side. So yeah, that's that one. And then maybe we can move to the next slide. And I think this might be the final one. This is just another example. I thought I would bring a few of the community art projects because I think they're wonderful. They're low budget, they're low barrier in a way. And really this is one of our most successful ones. And if you are interested in community public art, this is really in North Vancouver, it's a grant program. So an artist can come forward with a community agency with any kind of idea they have or want to see happen in the community and get apply for a grant and hopefully receive some funding to produce something. This is one of our most successful ones. It was called Tag Your Knit. It was run by the local arts council at the time, and they involved people from as young as 5 years old to 91, and they had knitting circles, and it was a very wonderful intergenerational exercise. They knit these squares. The artists put the squares together, and then at different times over spring, summer, and fall, they picked a set of trees along Lonsdale Avenue, and this set for a couple months, the next set, and then the top set at the top of Lonsdale. And then afterwards, they took them apart and made blankets for the homeless. So it was a great project. So I just wanted to include that one as examples. There is one more? Okay. What? Oh. Oh, we're running an artist residency program now that you can apply for through on the North Vancouver Recreation and Culture website. And we are just inviting artists to come forward with their ideas, what they'd like to do, help them further their practice, give them opportunities in spaces, and really, but ask them to focus a little bit on the North Shore, but really we're focused on the artists and what the artists need with that program. Yeah, so that's on our website, the nvrc.ca.
Thank you, Lori. So the last bit of the presentation before we go to questions is just how information is shared. And I just put a little bit from what we do in Richmond, but I do want to open it up to my colleagues here. And I wanted to mention that I will put together that list that we're talking about today in terms of how information is shared and send it off to Todd, my colleague Todd, who's here, and who will be sending you a little survey at the end of this workshop, so we can share that information. So you don't have to write it down, but you can if you want to. So in Richmond specifically, we do have our listserv, so you can subscribe by sending an email to publicart@richmond.ca. We also have a dedicated website called How Art Works, which speaks to different types of opportunities across the department. So we have public art opportunities, arts and culture opportunities, and so on. So not just public art. We have, of course, you can look at other government public art programs. So those are my colleagues here. The Creative Cities Network is a national program which goes across Canada, but there's opportunities for public art across Canada. There's also amazing toolkits there that you can find on Creative Cities Network, and all kinds of different information about public art and culture in arts and culture in Canada in general. Alliance for the Arts is a local site, a local organization in Vancouver, and they they have a website which shows opportunities for artist calls, as well as employment and volunteer opportunities. And it's quite active, so you can check it every day, and there's many different opportunities there. Akimbo, it's kind of mostly East Coast, I find, but there's opportunity. That's another website for public art opportunities. And Instant Coffee is another listserv that is local. We post a lot of our calls there, so you can find out not only artist calls, as well as exhibition announcements, talks, workshops, and so on. So I will write this down and send these to Todd to share with you, but perhaps I can open it up if I've missed anything from this list.
I'll just mention, predominantly opportunities at the City of Burnaby are both posted on our website, so burnaby.ca/publicart. It's very simple. I'm technically kind of housed under the Burnaby Art Gallery, so that's where I sit, that's where my team is. And so if you're looking for information about what's happening with public art in Burnaby, you can subscribe to the Burnaby Art Gallery newsletter, because that's where we do predominant amount of our posting. And we also try to connect in with the citywide newsletter. So it's really mostly through kind of city internal communications. But now we have more opportunities coming. So we're starting to explore some of these, and you pretty much covered them all. We'll probably be posting our upcoming opportunities on Instant Coffee, Akimbo, and maybe BC Alliance for the Arts is probably the other place that we'll be looking. But, in terms of survey and feedback, we are also quite interested to know if there's anywhere you look for information that we should be aware of. Maybe I'll just add that, it's hard to get really in depth with what we ask from artists to give to us when we send a call, because each one is sort of different and tailored differently. And maybe that's an interesting follow-up conversation, is like, what is an RFEOI, or what is a call to artists? Like, what are we asking from you, and how do you make those things so that they're, good? So I'll just pass it over to anyone else who wants to add.
I do want to add that if it's over a certain amount of money and it's a civic project, it will be on BC bid as well. And I think that's really important to note for people, because the higher level projects are all there for many communities across the board. It's a good, even place. And I just want to make sure people knew about that. But with the developer projects, they do not have to go on BC bid. And so a lot of the larger projects are then, it's more through our website. So it's important to make sure you sign up if you are interested in responding to calls, that you sign up for e-news in all of the municipalities that have public art programs.
We don't have a listserv. Pardon? Do you? No. But we share information, Akimbo and BC Arts Alliance on our website, social media. So both through the city's official channels, especially with larger calls, and also with New West Art Services is where sort of I fall under in terms of public art. If the calls are larger, we as a city have to post it on BC Bid as per our procurement guidelines, and then for local nations, we also have to reach out to the local nations to let them know about the calls as well. But I think checking our websites and our social media are probably a really good way to, and it can link to wherever you need to go, like BC Bid, if necessary.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It's always lovely to speak with you, and I always learn so much more each time we meet, so thank you. We do have about 15 minutes for questions, so please let us know. Todd, I don't know if you want me to bring the microphone to everybody, or you can just shout it out.
Hear it. So the question was, as an artist pitching, say, a freestanding sculpture work in a larger scale budget, what are the questions we wish an artist would ask us in order to have a successful pitch? Is that kind of the idea?
Well, maybe I'll start. I mean, we always have to be transparent. So we don't want to give somebody information that is not in the call or is outside of the scope of the project. So if, for example, if we're at the stage where we have shortlisted artists, and the artist asks me something very technical, like maybe the type of ground plane or something to do with the timeline or the contractor, whatever that may be, we make sure that that answer is shared with all shortlisted artists. So be aware that whatever information we're giving, we have to be fair to everybody.
And that's actually technical. All cities do that. Yeah. That's kind of like a standard approach, just for everyone's awareness.
But they typically are there may be technical questions that are within the scope of the work in the call. So we can't really give more information at that stage that because the artist hasn't been selected yet. So it's just what is publicly accessible and available in the call itself.
For people who haven't participated in this before, kind of standard approach is like you send out an opportunity, and then a pool of artists, people who are interested, will respond with a proposal, and then with an indication that they're interested. So whatever their credentials may be, and then you from there whittle it down to people who are, the term shortlisted, to present a more in-depth proposal, which is typically paid work. And then at that stage, you may be doing an interview. There's like various ways that you can do it. It's usually a kind of pitch, you know, kind of sharing the whole overview of a project. It's hard to say what, you know, if there are any specific questions or points of information, but I would say like maybe just being really attentive to the opportunity and responsive if you think there's something you don't know, to step forward and ask it. Because I think the more you can show that you're engaged with that particular opportunity, that you're thinking, that you have a lot of awareness of, you know, maybe what your own limits of knowledge or your own limits already are, and you need clarification to move it forward. You know, that just demonstrates that you kind of have the expertise that you need to ask the right questions at the right time. So it's a pretty vague answer, but I think it's, from my side, you know, I think that's the approach that I would look for. I don't know if anyone else.
Just quickly, I think for sure these answers are exactly right. Just make sure you know all the technical information you need to know to present. I think we also, when it sort of moves forward, we want to make sure that the artist is being realistic, that they're not over proposing what they say they can do, because we know how expensive everything is, so that you're nice and concise. You know what you are proposing is within a range that we because we see so many projects, we know, okay, that person obviously knows what they're talking about. And I think sometimes too, it's to ask, I think it's important to ask, is there any opportunities to leverage the project, which is, I love it when artists ask that, actually, because a lot of times developers say don't necessarily want to leverage, but it's like, hey, we're looking at that fencing. How much is already going to be spent on the fence? Can I have that $15,000 on the fence or $40,000 on the fence and add it to my budget, and I'm going to make a fence? You know, kind of thing. So thinking about leveraging, I think, is something that a lot of times artists don't, if they haven't done it, haven't thought about it. And that's something, a little hint, I think, that can sometimes be helpful.
Sometimes I don't know if there's a difference, but I think what is important is not to, I think when something is just plopped in a place and it feels alien to a place and it doesn't have context, I think that might be what you're kind of alluding to in terms of just having an artwork in a public setting. Yeah, and I think, well, I think that public art kind of started out as a way to engage people with art in a public setting so that they can interact with art on an everyday sort of setting. But I think as we've, over the years, public art practice has sort of changed a little bit, and we are asking for more site responsive, something that is really well integrated and reflects the meaning and the history, and as opposed to something that is just plunked in. But it really depends on the context. It could be sort of around a festival where you could see this type of art sort of having a function in that way that doesn't necessarily have to always respond to a place, and it's just about sharing art with people who may have never come across certain artworks in their everyday spaces. I don't know if that helps.
I also just want to say, for me, I've done public art for a lot of years. And I think it evolves. It really evolves. And one of my things that I'm really trying to get more dialogue about is that the word public art is one thing, and there's been a lot of offshoots off of it. And it's really a semantics question, and it's sort of like there's many different things. I think of art in public places as art on exhibition, outdoor gallery kind of thing. And there's a total place for that. There is a place for outdoor gallery. And many times it's temporary, like with the Vancouver Biennale. They bring in art. It's temporarily there for 3 years or so, and then it will go away a lot of times. And there's a real place for that. And many artists are more gallery exhibition artists. And so that's art in public places to me. Occasionally in cities over the years, they purchase them. They've been a good fit. They stay once they're there because they're a good fit for the community. Whereas public art is really more specifically about this teamwork approach we're talking about. I almost think of public art as a team sport. It's like your artist has to come in and work with a team and kind of respond to a community desires for what they want. And that can also kind of, it goes through ebbs and flows. Like when our public art program started in the early days, it was very focused on sort of history and that kind of thing. Now that we have 200 artworks, we're also like, where are we going as a future? What other things define us and that kind of thing. So that's also another good question for shortlisted artists is like, where is this program at this point in time, and what kind of things are kind of is everybody looking for now that you have X number of artworks in your community or in that neighborhood kind of thing. So what's kind of missing? What's the gap in that neighborhood? But yeah, I do see the distinction really clearly between art on exhibition, which is art in public place for me, and public art, which is this sort of team sport approach.
I like this team sport metaphor. I think I'll just add to that it kind of depends. Like, I think what you're asking is like, maybe is there room for different kinds of teams? Like, we're all municipal teams. We speak with the voice and responsibility of a government. We all take a different approach to that. We all feel more or less uncomfortable with being completely identified with a city government, but there is room in public art for independent production. I think the thing is that how do you get access to public space? How can you make a successful public art? How do you get all the money you require to make something that may require a lot of engineering or a lot of, there's a lot of questions you have to answer when you're putting something in public space, including like liability, like there are risk, like all of these things that we have to consider, because you can't just put something somewhere knowing, it's not just going to be admired. It's going to have a lot of other relationships with the community, and you have to be accountable to those. And I think that's part of the reason why so many municipalities take it on, because we are kind of positioned to be responsible and accountable in that way, hopefully. But with an artist team, it's a little harder. To navigate all of that. And I think, Other Sites is a great example of an organization that has really risen to that challenge. A lot of the people who founded and continue to work through that organization have decades of experience doing public art consulting on the side as part of their careers, or doing public art projects through governments or through educational institutions, but they're also artists. And so they come at it from the lens of the artist. And I think we're all interested in those things and finding ways to enable those things. But of course, we have the limit of what our role and our time can allow. So I think that's part of it too.
Just before we go to the next question, just on that, I just want to share some shameless promotion actually to your question. We are public art. Richmond is about to launch our next Lulu series next week, and our first speaker is a curator from the National Gallery, José Drouin Bresbois, and she's actually going to be speaking about this beyond. The artist talk is called Beyond the Museum Walls, and she's going to be speaking about the program of the National Gallery across Canada that is bringing art in public spaces. And there's some really interesting projects, one in Fogo Island that she's going to be talking about, and one in Winnipeg. This talk is on March 13th at 6 p.m., and we've collaborated with the Wilson School of Design. So it will be here in Richmond. So you'll get the information if you have subscribed on our listserv. But that conversation is very topical, and it will be happening on March 13th here in Richmond. There was one more question. Two more.
As an art therapist, where can I find opportunities to work with the public?
Good question.
That is a good question. Maybe a little bit more to unpack, but perhaps, and I'm just thinking out loud, but one of our projects that's called Engaging Artists in the Community, that may be one if the call speaks to you and your experience. That is where an artist works with a specific community. I think more of those community projects that work with engaging with the community, I think may speak to those, to that experience that you have. I don't know if you guys have any other ideas.
Agreed. I think that the community art programs and those kind of programs are the best. But anyone who is an artist, you know, you could also work. Are you an artist yourself, or you're an art therapist? Like, so to me, I could see you partnering with a public artist to do a project together. You know, a lot of times that's how especially if you haven't broken into the public art field, if you are able to somehow align yourself with an artist who's already doing public art and get jazzed yourself up on an idea, sometimes that's also a way to bring new ideas to the field. Yeah,
But like
so,
when I was little, I did a little bit, yeah.
yeah, so I'm sure very valid for the community art projects, but if you wanted to go into these bigger budget projects, you would probably align yourself, I think, with somebody. I don't know if anyone else has ideas.
Yeah, let's get that last question in there.
It's actually two questions. So my question is, so for some of these applications or call-outs, how much of a factor is being a local artist to that municipality? So I see that, like, I looked at a mural call-out from West Vancouver, and it said, do you have ties to West Vancouver? And I don't live in West Vancouver, so I was like, should I even apply to this? So that's my first question. Second question is, if you have a body of work that's only 2D, and then you see a call out for installation, something sculptural, how do you bridge that gap applying to it? Because you might have the vision for it, but not the portfolio.
We all really, feel like we talk about this a lot. Okay, first question, how do you approach being relevant to a community if you don't live there? I think we're all interested and open to having artists from other communities approach us, but we also have that pressure to serve and support the artists in our community. I would say always pitch, always go for it, and, you know, explore what your relationship might be. If that's we're about to launch the public art roster in Burnaby. Stay tuned, keep your eyes out, please apply. And there is a point on that where we ask you to kind of describe if you have any relationship to the community, but that it doesn't have to be, oh, I lived there or I grew up there. It can be something else. It could be your interest. Like, why are you interested in Burnaby? I don't, it's not a criteria that we're using to try and get rid of people or to cull people out. It's so that we can explore how to get to know the people who are already living in our community and how we can support them a little better. Because, you know, in the past, I think particularly in Burnaby, there haven't been tons of opportunities. So I think that's just one of our approaches. Second question was how to think about making that big leap between, you know, two-dimensional work to three-dimensional or installation-based work. You know, that's a big question. I think the roster programs that we pitch to the community is our attempt to try and help and foster that, so that an artist who may have never worked in a physical way in that particular way might get their first opportunity through that kind of process. And I think I would also suggest just like doing a bit of fabrication research about, you know, maybe what that, because sometimes it's a really responsive, like if it's like a glass integration on a building, you know, I've met some really great artists over the years who are just like really flexible about what kind of material research they were willing to do. And they were like primarily painters or working maybe in like sculptures that they could make with their hands. But when it came time to think about fritting glass, they just went deep into the kind of material research that they could get their hands on, and then came to the table really prepared to say like, well, I want to use this company because they have this kind of, you know, this type of color, or they use this approach to fritting. And fritting, for those who don't know, is like the embedding of color into glass as like a fabrication process. So, you know, like just like the willingness to get deep in that and know that you might fail a few times before you get it right.
maybe just on that, a little bit more shameless promotion. As part of our Art at Work program, our next workshop, which is free to the community always, is making public art with specialist fabricators. So it's facilitated by Sabina Sutherland, who is our public art conservator, and we've invited fabricators from 3DS Fabrication, a foundry, as well as solid rock steel fabricating contractors. So that's on April 24th. It's going to be online at 1 p.m. And Todd will probably follow up with a link to sign up for that. And we also have others on art markets coming up, on grant writing, and also writing proposal for exhibitions. But I think for those of you who are interested in making that leap from being a two-dimensional artist to creating three-dimensional artwork, it would be really great to kind of understand a little bit more about fabricators and what they do and what are the possibilities. We are at time. I don't know how you feel about another question. Yes.
Hello. Just wondering how important it is to make your art in Canada. We have a trade war developing. I'm just wondering if it's important in your projected budget, to include that made in Canada versus made offshore someplace. I notice a lot of local public art seems to be made offshore.
You know, previously, I think almost all cities, there's some complexity to the answer in that if you're a city and you're making something, there are procurement guidelines that help you, understand, like, for example, you have to go with the lowest bidder if you're looking for a thing. But recently in Burnaby, the city council passed kind of directive that we should be looking for made in Canada solutions through all our procurement. So that's like as of last week or the week before. So we're doing a lot of work right now to identify where the paper comes from for the mat boards that we use at the Burnaby Art Gallery when they make the shows and various things like that. It's like a whole fun research project about where everything comes from. But it's complex. Like, I think some artists have relationships, for example, with foundries in China, and we're not going to tell them necessarily like, oh, you have to make your work using a foundry here if it's a relationship you can't build, if there's a barrier to that. So, I think we try to work in the best way. I don't know how to answer this. Like, we work in the best way we can to support local, but we also don't want to impinge on creative freedom of an artist. However, I will say, I think like it will influence how we select things a little bit. Like, I think it will become a bit of a question. Like, you might be more inclined to hire Canadian artists versus American artists right now if you're thinking of a large scale commission. So
I can probably just say just a teeny bit. I think that's great. One thing I can say is that over the years, like, we do want to sort of look at this broad opportunity for all artists to get a chance to get a commission, because in reverse, we also want our artists to have broad opportunities around the world as well. Like, we don't like to close doors too much. We like to keep it as open as possible. But what I have found is when an artist is from another place, a lot of times they look to get their fabrication here, because it's better. True. It's better for them. It doesn't have to be transported across an ocean or across a country, or So if possible, most of the time I have found that artists will, even from other places, forge new relationships with fabricators in our local area. It's actually more cost effective, and it is keeping the money in our area, which we love as well.
I think that's true. Yeah, I would agree.
Just to add what Lori said, for us to, of course, it's important to work with local fabricators also for the maintenance program, because 10, 15 years from now on, we look at the maintenance manual, and if the work needs, it's much easier to be maintained and fixed if it need be by the person that built it. They have that knowledge if possible. So we're finding that's very helpful as well. this topic can be, we can talk more and more and more, but I think we just scratched the surface, and I just want to thank my colleagues, and Lori and Allison and Quyen. It was so wonderful to spend the morning with you. Thank you so much for coming for Richmond.
Thanks for having us, Biliana.
And like I said, there's going to be a survey, and please give us questions, follow-up questions if you have any, and also ideas for future workshops. I also wanted to mention that since you're here, the Richmond Art Gallery has an exciting exhibition at the moment called Hello Plastic? Nope. Dear Plastic. So please go and see it. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.